My mother was laughing. That's the detail I keep coming back to. Not my husband's hands wrapped around my sister's. Not the tropical flowers. Not the short white dress or the candlelight spilling through the chapel door onto the stone floor. My mother's laugh. Soft, familiar. The exact same laugh she used at Christmas dinners and birthday brunches and every milestone that had ever mattered to me. I had heard that laugh my entire life and associated it with safety, with warmth, with the specific comfort of being known by someone who loved you. I pressed my back against the chapel wall and listened to it float through the gap in the door, and I understood, with the cold clarity of a person receiving news they've been unconsciously preparing for years, that I had never actually known what it was for. I had thought it was love. It was relief. My name is Nora Vasquez Hale. I'm 31 years old. I'm a licensed CPA with a practice that I built from a single client, a restaurant owner in Phoenix who needed someone to untangle his sales tax filings and gave me a referral to 3 more people, who gave me referrals to 12 more, and so on for 6 years until I had 43 clients, a 2-person office off Camelback Road, and a 4-bedroom house in Arcadia that I'd put 20% down on myself. I need you to understand that last sentence before we go any further. The house was mine, my down payment, my credit score, my qualifying income on the mortgage application, my name on the deed. I had bought it 8 months before Adrian and I got married, and when we married, I added his name as a co-borrower, as a gesture of partnership, the kind of gesture that seemed obvious and generous and right at the time, the way every trap looks reasonable from outside it. Adrian Hale was 34, handsome in a reliable, low-maintenance way, square jaw, good smile, the kind of face that reads as trustworthy in a first meeting and takes years to learn otherwise. He was a consultant, which in practice meant he had a string of business ideas that I evaluated with professional thoroughness and funded with professional money and watched die with professional patience, a property development concept that never left the pitch deck stage, a short-term rental management company that lasted 14 months, a hospitality brand that consisted of an LLC, a logo, and 6 months of my money before I quietly suggested we pause and reassess. Each time, I told myself he was a visionary. Each time, I told myself patience was a virtue and that the right idea would land and I would be glad I had believed in him. What I was actually doing was funding my own replacement, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My sister Brianna is 3 years younger than me and has been, since approximately birth, the version of a daughter my parents actually wanted. She is beautiful in the way that stops people mid-sentence. Dark hair, my mother's cheekbones, an ease in social situations that I have spent my entire life watching and never successfully reverse-engineered. My mother photographed her constantly. At family dinners, at holidays, on vacations, she would angle the camera and say, "Brianna, look here," and Brianna would tilt her chin and smile, and the photo would be perfect. And I would be slightly out of focus in the background, or not in it at all. I was used to that. I was the responsible one, the capable one, the one who remembered everyone's dietary restrictions and sorted the travel insurance and read the fine print. I had a role in my family, and I had played it so long and so thoroughly that I had started to mistake it for identity. The family reconnection trip was my idea. My parents had been through a difficult couple of years. My father's mild cardiac event in the fall, a stressful period with the house they'd bought in Scottsdale that needed more work than projected. I wanted to give them something. I wanted us to be in a beautiful place together and remember that we loved each other. I planned the flights. I booked 4 nights at a resort in Wailea. Ocean view rooms, breakfast included, 1 suite for my parents, and standard rooms for Brianna and for Adrian and me. I paid the deposit on a private dinner reservation at a restaurant on the water that had a 3-week wait list. I bought everyone's airport parking. I was used to that too. We arrived on a Tuesday. The first 2 days were easy in the way that travel is easy when everything you've arranged works. My mother took photographs on the beach. My father went on a morning walk and came back looking rested in a way I hadn't seen in months. Adrian was attentive in public in the particular way he always was on vacations, more affectionate, more present, more like the version of himself I had married than the version I lived with day to day. I told myself that's what travel did for people. Thursday was the day everything changed. We'd been at the pool since 10. My mother and Brianna were in the water. My father was asleep in a lounge chair with a hat over his face. Adrian was on his phone, which was normal. Adrian was always on his phone, but there was something in the angle of his body, turned slightly away from the group, shoulders curved inward, that I noticed without registering. At around 2 in the afternoon, he set the phone down and stretched. "I think I need a walk," he said. "Just clear my head a little." He leaned over and kissed my forehead. I remember the texture of it. Light, practiced, the kiss you give someone when the gesture is the point and the feeling behind it has stopped mattering. "I'll be back before dinner," he said. He turned away from the beach. I watched him go. The beach was directly ahead of us. White sand, the ocean, the obvious direction for a person who wanted to walk and clear their head. He turned right, away from the water, toward the road that ran along the back of the resort. I told myself he probably wanted to find a pharmacy, or a coffee shop, or just a different view. I sat there for maybe 2 minutes. Then I put down my book. I'm not sure what I thought I was going to find. I think some part of me had been holding on to an unformed unease for months, something I couldn't locate or name, only feel in the way you feel a sound that's slightly too low to hear, a frequency rather than a fact. I had been living with it long enough that following my husband down a side road in Maui felt less like paranoia and more like finally turning toward a sound I'd been ignoring. I stayed far enough back fact that he wouldn't turn and see me. He walked quickly, not a meandering pace, not the gait of someone enjoying the scenery, purposeful, directed, going somewhere. The road curved past a row of low buildings, a parking lot half full with rental cars, a strip of commercial space, a surf shop, a smoothie place, a glass-blowing studio with the door propped open and music drifting out. And then the road narrowed and the commercial gave way to something quieter, and at the end of a short lane lined with hibiscus and overhanging palms, there was a chapel, small, white, a wooden door slightly ajar, flowering shrubs along the front wall, the kind that are deliberately, intentionally beautiful in the way of a place that performs occasions. Adrian walked straight to it. I stood across the road. My heart was doing something strange, not racing, not pounding, just beating in a way I was suddenly very aware of, each one distinct and deliberate. I waited. I waited for the logical explanation, for a friend's wedding that he'd forgotten to mention, for some coincidence that would make this a funny story later, for literally any reading of what I was seeing that wasn't what I was already understanding. None came. I crossed the road. I pressed my back against the outer wall of the chapel, to the right of the gap in the door. Through it, candlelight cut across the stone floor in a warm, unsteady line. I heard my sister's voice. She doesn't know, right? The question was low, careful, carrying the particular register of someone who is nervous but trying not to show it. Adrian's answer was the opposite. Calm, warm even. Relax. She thinks I'm walking along the beach. I did not move. Brianna said something I couldn't catch, something soft, and then I heard a small sound, a laugh, close and familiar, and I leaned very slightly to the side to see through the gap. My mother was near the front. She was standing beside my father, who was adjusting his tie with the focused expression he wore at formal occasions. My mother had her hand on his arm and she was laughing. The soft, familiar laugh, the safe one, the Christmas dinner one, and she looked happy. My sister was standing near the altar in a short white dress with tropical flowers in her hands, and her hair loose and her face shining in the candlelight. My husband walked toward her and took her hands in his. "Once everything is arranged back home," he said, his voice quiet and practiced and carrying the certainty of a man who has already decided the future, "we can start our real life." Real life, 2 words. And everything I had been holding as ambiguous, as unformed, as possible to explain away, landed in those 2 words and became concrete. Every late night he called work. Every business venture I had funded with my own money. While he described his vision in words I recognized now as rehearsed. Every loan my parents said they desperately needed. The Scottsdale house, my father's medical bills, the bridge loan they'd asked for 18 months ago that I hadn't mentioned to anyone because I didn't want to make it weird. The house I bought, my name, and then his on the deed. The joint accounts we'd merged after the wedding because that's what married couples do. That's what trust looks like in practice. That's what I thought we were doing. They hadn't just been deceiving me. They had been building on top of me, using me as the financial foundation of a life I wasn't invited to live. And when the foundation was solid enough, they were going to walk away from it together and call what was left my problem. The cry rose in my throat. Real, involuntary, the kind that doesn't ask permission. I let it rise, and then, slowly, deliberately, I let it go back down. Because if I walked through that door, here is exactly what would happen. My mother would reach for my arm. My father would say something careful and measured. Adrian would look sorry in the specific way he looked sorry when he needed me to accept an explanation. Open face, concerned eyes, the body language of a man who is good at being forgiven. Brianna would cry. Someone would say I was misunderstanding. Someone would say I should calm down. Someone would offer me a glass of water and suggest we discuss this privately, somewhere I could be managed. I had spent my entire life being managed. Not today. I turned away from the door. I walked back down the lane, past the hibiscus, past the palms, past the surf shop and the smoothie place, and the couples taking photos outside the glass-blowing studio where the music was still playing. I walked through the resort lobby with my face composed and my hands loose at my sides, and I went to the front desk and asked, very quietly, for a private room. The woman at the desk, young, efficient, a name tag that said Kiala, looked at me for just a second longer than a check-in normally requires. Whatever she saw, she asked no questions. "Of course," she said. One moment, she handed me a key card. Room 214, ground floor, facing the garden. I thanked her and walked down the corridor, and when the door closed behind me and I was alone in a quiet room with white walls and the sound of the ocean somewhere distant and the afternoon light coming flat through the curtains, I sat on the edge of the bed and I breathed for exactly 30 seconds. Then I called a lawyer. Her name was Margaret Chen. She was a family law attorney based in Phoenix, 30 years in practice, a reputation that I had researched carefully 6 months prior and filed away in the part of my brain that stored information I hoped I'd never use. I had found her during a late night that I couldn't explain at the time, a night when Adrian had come home at 11:30 from a client dinner, and I had lain awake afterward doing the kind of quiet accounting that you do when something doesn't add up and you don't yet want to know what it is. I had saved her number under M. Chen, referral, and told myself it was just research. She answered on the second ring. I spoke slowly, clearly, the way I was trained to speak to clients when the news is bad and precision matters. "I'm in Hawaii," I said. "My husband is in a chapel right now with my sister. My parents are there. I'm watching them plan a life together using money and property that is legally mine. I need to protect my house and my accounts before I get on a plane home." Margaret Chen said, "You did the right thing by calling first." We talked for 22 minutes. I told her everything, the house, the accounts, the business loans I'd quietly funded, the $18,000 bridge loan to my parents, the joint property, and the shared investments. She listened without interrupting, the way good attorneys do, taking everything in before she starts sorting it. Your house, she said. Is his name currently on the deed? Yes. Added after marriage. The mortgage is in both names, but I am the primary borrower. The original down payment? Documented. My personal savings account. I have the transfer records. Good. A pause. There are some immediate protective steps we can take before you land. I'll need you to document everything you saw. Time, location, what was said. Voice memo or written, doesn't matter. Just do it while it's fresh. I grabbed the hotel notepad from the desk. I wrote everything down in the clean, precise handwriting of a person who has been recording facts for a living for a decade. 2:04 p.m. Chapel on Kilahana Road, approximately 0.4 miles from the resort. Adrian Hale and Brianna Vasquez present. Parents, Robert and Cecilia Vasquez, present. White dress, flowers, exact words spoken. She doesn't know, right? Relax. She thinks I'm walking along the beach. Once everything is arranged back home, we can start our real life. I photographed the notepad with my phone. There's more, I told Margaret. My parents borrowed money from us. $18,000, structured informally as a loan, never documented properly. And I've been the primary funder of multiple business ventures in my husband's name. All of that, she said, is relevant to the asset division proceeding. Don't discuss any of it with your husband, your parents, or your sister until we filed. Not a word. I understand. When can you be back in Phoenix? I opened my laptop, pulled up the airline app. There's a flight at 7:15 tonight, gets in at 2:30 a.m. Book it, she said. I'll have a locksmith at your house by 9 tomorrow morning. We'll begin the protective filing on the accounts by noon. I booked it. I went back to the suite. My bag was in the closet, mostly still packed because I had only unpacked what I needed each day. A habit of efficiency, of always being ready to move. I added what was on the bathroom counter, folded the 2 dresses I'd hung, zipped the case. I looked around the room. The ocean view suite I had researched and reserved and paid for. The terrace where Adrian and I had had coffee the first morning, where I had thought we were doing well. I did not leave a note. I did not send a text. I did not say goodbye to my parents or my sister or the version of my life that had been running in a direction I hadn't chosen. I walked through the lobby with my suitcase, thanked Kiala at the front desk, and got into a rideshare to the airport, 30,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, with my phone on airplane mode and the lights of the cabin dimmed, and most of the passengers asleep. I sat with my hands folded in my lap and stared out the window at the dark and thought about foundations. I thought about what it means to build on something that doesn't know it's being built on. I thought about my house in Arcadia, the one with the terracotta tile on the front walk and the lemon tree in the backyard that I had planted from a sapling. And I thought about how much of what I thought was partnership had actually been extraction. I didn't cry. Not on the plane. Later, but not on the plane. I landed at Sky Harbor at 2:47 a.m. I was home by 3:20. I set my suitcase inside the front door and walked through the house in the dark, touching things. The kitchen counter, the bookshelf, the frame of the back door, in the way you touch things when you need to confirm they're still there. They were still there. The next morning, Margaret Chen's recommended locksmith, a man named Dale, who ran a company called SecureFast out of Tempe, and had apparently done this particular kind of job before, because he asked no questions and worked efficiently, rekeyed every lock in the house by 9:45 a.m. By noon, Margaret had filed for the temporary injunction on the shared accounts. The filing cited marital waste and dissipation of assets, which is the legal language for my husband has been spending our money on a future that didn't include me. She also filed the initial divorce petition. At 2 p.m., I had a call with my accountant, James Okafor, 14 years in practice, CPA and CFP, who had been managing my personal finances in parallel with my business since I started the practice. I walked him through what I needed. He was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Nora, he said carefully, the patterns in the joint account, the irregular outflows over the last 18 months, I had flagged some of those internally, but hadn't raised them because you seemed satisfied with the explanations. What patterns? I said. He sent me the analysis within the hour. $37,000 in transfers to a holding account linked to a Nevada LLC. The LLC, James had cross-referenced, was registered to an Adrian J. Hale. My husband had been quietly moving money. I forwarded the document to Margaret at 3:15 p.m. Her response came in 11 minutes. This changes the filing. Potentially criminal exposure. We'll discuss tomorrow. I sat at my kitchen table with James's analysis open on my laptop and a cup of tea that had gone cold, and I ran the numbers the way I run all numbers. Methodically, completely, without looking away from the result. $37,000 moved over 18 months into an account I hadn't known existed, for a future being constructed quietly, piece by piece, financed by my income, my credit, and my apparently inexhaustible willingness to believe what I was told. I added that to the business loans, $41,000 across 3 ventures, the informal loan to my parents, $18,000. The discrepancy in the household expense contributions that James had helpfully calculated as part of the analysis, $22,000 over 3 years. The differential between what I contributed and what Adrian did, total, $118,000. That was the cost of my foundation, priced out. I didn't tell anyone what had happened, not friends, not colleagues, not my assistant Maya, who noticed I was quieter than usual that week and asked if I was okay and received the response, just tired, long trip. I needed to be invisible until the legal groundwork was done. Margaret worked quickly. On Monday, she filed the divorce petition and the asset protection motion simultaneously. The temporary restraining order on the joint accounts was granted by a Maricopa County judge named the Honorable Patricia Reyes, 22 years on the bench, known for family law cases involving financial misconduct. By Tuesday afternoon, the Nevada LLC filing was referred to a financial crimes investigator at the Arizona Attorney General's office, Special Agent Daniel Ruiz, who had spent 11 years doing exactly this kind of asset tracing work. Special Agent Ruiz called me on Wednesday. "Ms. Vasquez-Hale," he said in the tone of a professional who is being careful with information he considers significant, "I want to ask you a few questions about the transactions your attorney flagged." I answered every one of them, clearly, with documentation. He called me back Thursday. "There are additional transfers we've identified," he said, "beyond what your accountant found. We'll need to discuss." "Of course," I said. I poured myself a second cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table and waited. They came home on Saturday. I knew because I had installed a Ring doorbell camera the previous December after a package was stolen from the porch, and the app pinged me at 4:22 p.m. with a motion alert. I was on my couch. My tea was hot this time. I had a cashmere blanket over my legs, and the afternoon light was coming through the living room window at the angle I had always liked, long and low, the way it gets in October, warm without heat. I picked up my phone and opened the camera feed. A car, a rental, still had the sticker in the corner of the back window, pulled into the driveway. Adrian got out first. He was moving with the easy confidence of a man coming home, rolling his suitcase with one hand, phone in the other, checking something, the specific body language of someone who has no idea anything is different. Brianna got out from the back seat. She had a tote bag over one shoulder and sunglasses on, and she looked the way she always looked, composed, pretty, accustomed to things going her way. My parents got out last, my father carrying his small leather duffel, my mother with the expression she wore after a trip she'd enjoyed. Adrian went up the porch steps. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out his key. I watched him slide it into the lock. The key did not turn. He pulled it out, looked at it, tried again, still nothing. Brianna stepped up behind him and saw it first, the folder I had taped to the door that morning. White letter-size envelope, 3 documents inside, sealed with a strip of tape. She pointed. He looked. He opened it. I watched his face on the 3-inch screen of my phone as he read the first page. The locksmith receipt, Dale's company letterhead, the date, the service description, full rekey, residential property, 4 locks. Then the second page, the property restriction notice, filed with the Maricopa County Recorder's Office, noting the active divorce proceeding and restricting any transfer or encumbrance of the property pending resolution. And the third, the first page of the divorce petition. On the welcome mat, where the key would normally sit when we got home from trips, a habit Adrian had, always leaving the spare on the mat, his wedding ring. I had found it on the bathroom counter the morning after I arrived home. I had placed it there deliberately. The silence on the camera feed stretched. There is no audio on that camera, which I had always found mildly annoying and now found perfect. I watched my husband read a document that told him the foundation was gone. I watched my sister take off her sunglasses. I watched my mother turn to look at my father. I watched my father say something. I couldn't read his lips, but his face had the expression of a man recalculating, the same expression my accountant gets when a number doesn't add up and he needs a moment. Adrian turned toward the camera. He knew it was there. We'd discussed it when I installed it. He looked at it for a moment, not with anger, but with something more complicated. Recognition, maybe. The understanding that the person he thought he had managed into compliance had, in fact, been managing him. I set my phone face down on the couch cushion. I picked up my tea. Outside, October light moved across my living room floor. The terracotta tile I had chosen myself, the bookshelves I had built, the lemon tree visible through the back window that I'd been tending for 3 years, and that was, I was happy to report, doing extremely well. Here is what came after. The divorce took 14 months. Margaret Chen, who turned out to be as formidable in a courtroom as her reputation suggested, and whose 20-minute consultation at a Maui hotel room on a Thursday afternoon I will consider one of the best investments of my life, recovered $211,000 in the final settlement, accounting for the dissipated assets, the LLC transfers, the informal loans, and the differential property contributions. Adrian's attorney, a man named Gareth Sims, who I later learned had advised his client this was unwinnable, filed 3 motions that Judge Reyes denied in sequence with the specific terseness of someone who considers her time valuable. Special Agent Ruiz's referral resulted in a formal investigation. The Nevada LLC had been used to conceal approximately $53,000 in assets across the period of the marriage. Adrian was ultimately charged with 1 count of financial fraud and pled to a lesser charge that resulted in 2 years of probation, restitution, and a fine. His name will appear on the public record of that plea for the foreseeable future, which is a fact I neither celebrate nor mourn. It simply exists. Brianna moved to San Diego. I haven't spoken to her. I don't know what she expected. Possibly that I would eventually be the bigger person in this specific way she'd always counted on me to be, to absorb and accept and readjust to accommodate everyone else's comfort. I have retired from that particular version of myself. My parents were a longer, harder conversation. My father, to his credit, was the first to call, not with excuses, but with the specific bleak acknowledgement of a man who has understood something about himself too late and is not sure there is anything to be done. We talk occasionally, carefully. I am not sure what we are to each other anymore. I'm still finding out. My mother has not called. James Okafor is still my accountant. He now flags every anomaly same day, which is what I should have asked for from the beginning and what I will ask for from everything going forward. The house is mine. My name only, on the deed now as it should always have been. The lemon tree produced more than I could use this season, so I left bags of them on neighbors' porches the way the people on my street do, and me. I took 3 weeks off in January and did nothing professionally useful. I went to the library and read novels. I cooked elaborate dinners for myself and ate them at the table with a book propped open. I went to therapy. My therapist is named Dr. Aisha Osei, who has 14 years in family trauma and systems theory, and who said something in our 4th session that I haven't stopped thinking about. The role you were assigned in your family was never about who you actually were. It was about what they needed. The question now is who you are when nobody needs you to be anything. I've been working on the answer. I still run the practice. 47 clients now. Maya, who noticed I was quiet that October and asked if I was okay, got a promotion in February. We celebrated with lunch at a place with a very good wine list. I still plan things carefully. I still read the fine print. I am still, by nature and by training, precise. The difference is that now when I build something, I know whose foundation it's standing on. Mine. And I am no longer in the habit of letting other people stand on it without knowing the cost.